students, welcome to today's session, Lesson 8, Lasswell's Model of Communication. Objectives: Understanding Lasswell's and SMCR models. Identify model components. Explore communication channels. Evaluate communication effects. Apply Lasswell and SMCR models to examples. Evaluate advantages and challenges. Introduction: HHarold Lasswell's communication model, often referred to as the Lasswell's Formula, is a classic framework that outlines key elements in the communication process. The model is encapsulated in the question, who says what, in which channel, to whom, with what effect. This question serves as a guide to identity and analyze the essential components of communication. HHarold Lasswell's model of communication was formulated in mid-20th century. Lasswell was a prominent American political scientist and communication theorist, and his model was developed during 1940s and 1950s. Explanation of model: who, that is sender. The element focuses on the source or sender of communication. It involves studying the characteristics, intentions and attributes of communicator. Questions related to the sender include: who is sending the message? What is their credibility, expertise and authority? Says what is the message. The what pertains to the content of the message itself. It involves examining the information, ideas or emotions being communicated. Researchers analyze the language, symbols and framing used in the message to understand its meaning and potential impact. In which channel? The channel refers to the medium or method through which message is transmitted. The element explores the choice of communication channels, whether it is face-to-face conversation, written, text, radio, television or digital media. Different channels can affect how a message is perceived and received. To whom? Receiver. The receiver is the target audience or individuals who interpret and receive the message. Understanding the characteristics, beliefs and perspectives of the audience is crucial in assessing how the message might be received. The elements involve asking questions such as: who is intended audience? What are their characteristics and expectations? With what effect? The final element focuses on the impact or effect of the communication. It considers the intended and unintended consequences of the message on the audience. Questions related to the effect include: what changes in attitudes, beliefs or behaviors result from the communication? How does the message influence the audience? Examples for Lasswell's model of communication: political speech. Who is the sender? The political leader delivering a speech. Says what is the message? The content of the speech, including policy proposals, promises and persuasive rhetoric. In which channel? The speech may be delivered through various channels such as live broadcasts on television, radio or streaming platforms. To whom? The target audience includes voters, citizens and other stakeholders. With what effect? The impact could be measured by changes in public opinion like voter share, etc. Advertising campaign. Who is the sender? The company or brand running the advertisement campaign. Says what? The content of the advertisements include product features, benefits and branding messages. In which channel? Advertisements may appear on newspaper, television, social media, billboards and other platforms. To whom? The target audience include potential consumers of the product or service. With what effect? The impact may be assessed through changes in brand awareness, sales or consumer attitudes. Interpersonal communication. Who? An individual engaged in the conversation. Says what? The verbal and non-verbal content of the conversation, including opinions, information and emotions. in which channel the conversation may take place face to face over the phone or through digital communication tools, to whom, the person or people participating in the conversation, with what effect. The impact could be changes in understanding, agreement or emotional states among the participants. News broadcast. Who? The news organization or journalist presenting the news. Says what? The information, facts and stories being reported. In which channel? The news may be broadcasted on television, radio or published online. To whom? The audience include viewers, listeners and readers. With what effect? The impact may involve changes in public awareness, perception or understanding of current events. Advantages of Lasswell's model of communication. The Lasswell's model of communication offers several key benefits as a conceptual framework for analyzing communication process. Here is a detailed explanation of some of these advantages. Systematic analysis. Lasswell's model provides a systematic and structured approach to analysis of communication by breaking down the communication process into key components: who says what, in which channel, to whom, with what effect. It facilitates a comprehensive examination of each element. Clarity and simplicity. The simplicity of the model makes it accessible and easy to understand for students, researchers and practitioners. Its clarity allows individuals to grasp the fundamental elements of communication without getting overwhelmed by the complexity. Versatility. The model is versatile and applicable to a wide range of communication contexts, from interpersonal interactions to mass media. This adaptability makes it a valuable tool for analyzing diverse forms of communication, including political speeches, advertising and everyday conversation. Holistic approach. Lasswell's model encourages a holistic perspective for considering multiple dimensions of communication simultaneously. It emphasizes the interconnectedness of the sender, message, channel, receiver and effect, promoting a more comprehensive understanding of the communication dynamics. Research guidance. The model serves as a guide for researchers, providing a set of key questions that can be explored in the study of communication phenomena. Researchers can use the model to structure their inquiries and guide the collection and analysis of data. Identification of key variables. Lasswell's model helps identify and isolate key variables in the communication process. Researchers and analysts can focus on specific elements such as sender's credibility, message content or the choice of communication channels to gain deeper insights into communication dynamics. Policy and strategy development. The model is useful for policymakers and communication strategists by understanding the elements of communication. Decision makers can develop more effective strategies for disseminating information, shaping public opinion and achieving communication goals. Teaching and learning tools. In educational settings, Lasswell model serves as an effective teaching and learning tool. It provides a foundational framework for introducing students to key components of communication and helps them develop analytical skills in understanding different communication scenarios. Critical thinking. The model encourages critical thinking by prompting individuals to consider the various factors influencing communication. It prompts questions about the motives of the sender, the impact on the receiver and the role of communication channel, fostering a deeper analysis of communication process. Adapting to evolving communication technologies. Lasswell's model remains relevant even in the face of evolving communication technologies. While the model was formulated in an era dominated by traditional media, it can be applied to contemporary forms of communication, including digital media and social networking platforms. Drawbacks of Lasswell's model of communication. Simplification of communication. Lasswell's model oversimplifies the complex nature of communication by reducing it to a set of key elements. Communication involves intricate and dynamic processes that may not always fit neatly into the model's structured components. Linear and one-way focus. The model is linear and predominantly one-way, implying that communication flows from sender to the receiver with little emphasis on feedback or interactive nature of communication. In reality, communication is often more interactive and circular, involving feedback loops and multiple exchanges. Limited emphasis on context. Lasswell's model does not place enough emphasis on the importance of context in communication. The effectiveness and interpretation of a message can be heavily influenced by cultural, social, and situational context, which the model does not explicitly address. Inadequate treatment of feedback. While this model acknowledges the concept of effect, it does not explicitly incorporate a robust understanding of feedback. In real-life communication, feedback is crucial for understanding how a message is received for adjusting subsequent communication. Lack of emotional and non-verbal elements. The model does not adequately account for emotional and non-verbal aspects of communication. Emotions, body language, and other non-verbal cues play a significant role in shaping the meaning of messages, but the model primarily focuses on verbal content. Neglect of power dynamics. The model does not explicitly consider power dynamics in communication. In many communication scenarios, power relations between the sender and receiver can significantly influence the effectiveness and impact of the message. Static representation. The model presents communication as a static process without considering the dynamic and evolving nature of communication over time. Communication is influenced by changing circumstances, evolving relationships, and shifting contexts, which the model does not capture adequately. Neglect of mediated communication. Lasswell's model was developed in an era dominated by traditional media. The rise of digital and mediated communication is not explicitly addressed in the model, limiting its applicability to contemporary communication contexts. Lasswell's model of communication lie in its simplicity, versatility, and ability to guide systematic analysis across various communication contexts, making it a valuable tool for researchers, educators, and practitioners in the field of communication studies. The model also remains a valuable starting point for understanding communication process, and it can be complemented with other theories and models to provide a more comprehensive perspective on the complexities of human communication. Berlo's or SMCR model of communication. Introduction. The SMCR model of communication is attributed to David Berlo, an American communication theorist. Berlo introduced the model in his book, The Process of Communication, an Introduction to Theory and Practice in 1960. The SMCR model is one of the early attempts to simplify and break down the communication process into its basic components, providing a linear and straightforward framework for understanding how communication occurs. The SMCR model of communication stands for source, message, channel, and receiver. This model is a simple and linear representation of communication process, breaking it down into four essential components. Source. The source is the initiator or sender of communication. It can be an individual, group, organization, or any entity that originates the message. The source is responsible for encoding the message, which involves putting thoughts, ideas, or information into a form that can be transmitted. Example. Source here is the teacher who wants to communicate information about an upcoming assignment to the students. Message. The message is the information, idea or content that the source wants to convey to the receiver. It can be verbal, written, visual or combination of different forms of communication. The effectiveness of communication depends on how well the message is crafted and how accurately it is decoded by the receiver. Example: message is the specific details about the assignment, including the due date, requirements and any additional information like information about the upcoming assignments in which students need to submit a research paper. The deadline is 2 weeks from now and it should be at least 5 pages long, following the guidelines that were discussed in the class. Channel. The channel refers to the medium or method used to transmit the message from the source to the receiver. Channels can include face-to-face communication, written communication such as letters or emails, phone calls, video calls, broadcasting and various digital communication platforms. The choice of channel can impact how the message is perceived and understood. Example: the channel in this case is face-to-face communication in a classroom setting. Teacher delivering the message verbally, allowing students to hear and communicate. Receiver. The receiver is the intended audience or target of the communication. This can be an individual, a group or the general public. The receiver's role is to decode the message, translating the encoded information back into the form that can be understood. The receiver's interpretation may be influenced by the factors such as knowledge, attitudes and context. Example: the students are the receivers of the message. They are intended audience who needs to understand and act upon the information conveyed. The role is to reason, comprehend and potentially ask questions for clarification. In this example, source is the teacher, message is the information about upcoming assignment, channel is the face-to-face communication in a classroom and receivers are the students. This example illustrates the basic elements of SMCR model in a simple communication scenario. However, it is important to note that real world communication is often more complex, involving feedback, contextual factors and the potential for misunderstandings. The SMCR model serves as a foundational framework, but it may need to be complemented with additional elements to capture the richness of communication process. Advantages of SMCR model. Simplicity. The simplicity of SMCR model makes it easy to understand, particularly for those new to the study of communication. Its straightforward representation of communication process helps provide a basic framework for grasping the essential elements. Clarity. The model offers clarity by breaking down communication into distinct components: source, message, channel and receiver. This clarity can be helpful for beginners in communication studies to comprehend the basic structure of a communication event. Teaching tool. The SMCR model serves as an effective teaching tool for introductory communication courses. It provides a starting point for discussing the fundamental elements of communication before delving into more complex theories and models. Foundation for analysis. In certain situations, the SMCR model can serve as a foundation for analyzing straightforward communication scenarios. It prompts individuals to consider the key elements involved in communication, facilitating a structured analysis. Ease of application. Due to its simplicity, the SMCR's model is easy to apply to various communication contexts. It can be adapted to describe communication in everyday interactions as well as in more formal settings. Introduction to communication studies. For individuals new to the field of communication studies, the SMCR model provides an initial framework for understanding the basic components of communication. It offers a starting point before exploring more nuanced theories and models. Communication planning. In practical terms, the model can be used as a basic guide for planning communication strategies. Individuals responsible for crafting and delivering messages may find the model helpful in structuring their communication efforts. Linear representation. In some situations, the linear representation of the model may be appropriate. For example, in certain forms of mass communication where a message is broadcasted to a wide audience through a single channel, the SMCR model can offer a basic understanding of the process. Challenges of SMCR model of communication. Oversimplification. The model is criticized for oversimplifying the communication process. Real-world communication is often more complex, involving feedback, context, noise, and dynamic interactions. The linear and one-way nature of the model does not fully capture the complexity. Lack of feedback. The SMCR model does not explicitly incorporate feedback. Communication is inherently interactive and feedback is crucial for understanding how message is received for making adjustments. The absence of feedback in this model is a significant limitation. Static representation. The model presents communication as a static and linear process, suggesting that communication flows in one direction from source to the receiver. In reality, communication is often more dynamic, involving multiple feedback loops and exchanges. Inadequate treatment of context. The model does not sufficiently address the role of context in communication. Contextual factors such as cultural norms, social dynamics, and situational variables can significantly influence how messages are interpreted. But model lacks a dedicated consideration of context. Limited cultural sensitivity. The model does not explicitly account the cultural differences in communication. Cultural nuances and variations in communication styles are essential considerations, especially in today's globalized and diverse communication environments. Linear nature. The model implies a linear flow of communication with a very clear beginning and end. This linearity does not accurately represent the circular and iterative nature of many communication processes where messages are constantly adjusted and refined. Neglect the nonverbal communication. The model focuses primarily on verbal communication and may neglect the role of nonverbal cues, which play a significant role in conveying meaning. Nonverbal elements such as body language, facial expressions, and gestures are essential components of communication. Absence of power dynamics. The model does not explicitly address power dynamics in communication. Power relations between the source and the receiver can impact the effectiveness and interpretation of messages, but the model does not provide a framework for analyzing these dynamics. Limited explanation of encoding and decoding. While the model mentions encoding by the source and decoding by the receiver, it does not delve into complexities of these processes. The model does not explore how individuals encode their messages or how receivers interpret and decode messages. Technological changes. The model was developed in an era where communication was primarily face-to-face or through traditional media channels. Technological advancements, including digital communication and social media, have introduced new complexities that the model does not explicitly address. SMCR model serves as a basic framework for understanding communication. Its limitations highlight the need for more sophisticated models and theories that can better capture the intricacies of communication in diverse and dynamic contexts. Summary. In today's session, we had a detailed understanding of basic communication models. Both models provide a structured framework for understanding communication process, but differ in their level of complexity. Lasswell's model incorporates a more comprehensive set of components and explicitly includes the analysis of sender and receiver's characteristics, the message content and efforts of communication. whereas the SMCR model simplifies the communication process into 4 basic elements, making it more accessible for introductory discussions and teaching purposes. Lasswell's model may be considered more holistic, emphasizing the interconnectedness of various communication components, while the SMCR model of communication offers a linear representation suitable for straightforward communication scenarios. Both models have been influential in the field of communication studies, each serving specific educational and analytical purposes. Thank you.